Friends, as hardcore car guys and gals, you and I need to have a discussion, and it has to do with the vast majority of cars that have ever been produced over the history of time. You see, no matter how interesting a car may be, if we're really honest with each other, they're still just transportation. Now, there are those examples out there that are very exciting to us, and they may be technological marvels, but in the cold hard light of day, still just a car. But then there's that rarefied air, where something does its intended task so well that it transcends from being a car to being a religious experience. So today, you and I are not going to talk about technology. We're not going to talk about getting from point A to point B. No, you and I are going to experience religion. So the big thing that we need to really understand is how does this deliver power over those many turbo 991.2s that you and I have. This is so good. How does it deliver power differently from those many 991.2s we've driven? Long and short of the story, it sounds wonderful, but you've really got to wring it out to get power. You know how we talked about in those new 991.2s, whether they're the turbos or the regular turbos, whatever we're calling them, those deliver power pretty quickly, very low in the power band. This is just a bit different. As a matter of fact, why don't you and I slow down here? We'll try a PDK trick here. Hold the paddles, goes into neutral mode. You don't even need a stereo in this thing. That is... Anyway. We're going to go back into fourth, down to third, put our foot into it. And the big thing you notice, yeah, it's more horsepower, but you have to really put your foot into it to get the power out of this, say, as opposed to a 991.2 turbo. That, the power comes in at about 2,000 RPM. This all the way up at 6,000 RPM to get 339 pounds of torque that we talked about in the tech review. And there's a lot of differences. So if you didn't see the tech review, make sure you go back to it, and we cover all sorts of reasons why a GT3 is a GT3, and it's just magnificent. Anyway, the second thing, let's go into PDK sport mode and try this going around some turns and see how usable the 500 horsepower is, but more importantly, 339 pounds of torque. Because if you think about it, 500 horsepower, you'd expect 500 pounds of torque. At least that's what we're getting out of most Vs and inlines and that kind of stuff. Flat sixes or flat fours inherently are lower torque, and this being naturally aspirated, we've got that low torque to deal with it. So let's put our foot into it going up the hill. Nice turn here with an elevation change, downshift. Oh my God. Come around this thing, put our foot into it. You know what? The natural tendencies of a flat six having, oh my God, this thing sounds incredible. Of a flat six not having as much torque as those new fancy turbo models they have. It does not make a difference in any way, shape, or form. I really am trying to be unbiased here because I know this is going to be glowing no matter what when you're watching it from that side. It is just so much, excuse my French, f***ing fun. I gotta get me one of these things. Now let's discuss a bit of science, specifically aerodynamics, and start with the elephant in the room, this. It is 0.8 of an inch taller than the wing on a 991.1 GT3, but it is not an island. It works in conjunction with some other parts. Here, ram air induction a la Pontiac playbook, love to see that. And then the front and the back. Now, it's a combination of restyled for aerodynamics, but more importantly, construction. You know me, I love talking construction. So like the i8 and the i3 where we went on and on and on about carbon fiber reinforced polymer, it's kind of the same stuff here as well as in the front. So it's composites that's been reinforced with carbon fiber to make it lighter and stronger. And what they've done is they've lowered the weight of these pieces by 20%, but putting them all together increased the downforce on the overall car by 20%. And they've done this without impacting the coefficient of drag, which is still 0.33. So overall downforce is 340 pounds. And here, you thought the wing was just about being obnoxious. Okay, so that is indeed a lot of interesting information from the folks at Zoffenhausen, but how does all that extra downforce impact the driving dynamics? For this, I do need to let a little my av geek fall out of my pocket here. So that big honking thing back there, that definitely impedes your rearward vision. As a matter of fact, it almost feels like there is a car that is constantly overtaking you. It's not quite to the visibility props of a Camaro, but you always feel like there's something in your blind corner there. But back to the point of downforce. So what's happening is we've turned the wing of an airplane upside down to create a faster bit of wind going over the top of the wing, and it's slower going over the bottom. And that gives you the reversed lift effect of, say, an airplane. Now, in this case, it works in conjunction with the revised front fascia that puts additional downforce on the whole car, both front and rear. And I would argue this feels significantly more stable than any other 991.2 that we've driven thus far. So now that we got that out of the way, let's put our foot into it and understand some of the differences. And the biggest thing is you don't have an axle in the front. You've got McPherson struts, you got additional dampers there, and some more tuning, but at the end of the day, there is no front axle, as most 911s have nowadays. So if I come around and turn like this, even second gear, put our foot into it, the front wheels are not fighting in two planes of motion. All they're doing is steering the car, which is why you and I prefer two-wheel drive over all-wheel drive. Now, for me, let's put aside the technical scientific piece. What's going on here is this takes you back to 911s of yesterday. You get that perfect goodness of a two-wheel drive car that's been perfected over 50 years. But one of the big differences, and you may not remember this from when the 991.1 came out, the engine is sitting an inch farther forward. So that, oh my God, this thing sounds so amazing. The engine is sitting an inch farther forward. So that means this is a more perfect balance is not the right term, because these things never were a perfect balance, but it makes it more, if there is such a thing as a 911 having neutral handling, which they don't, this is the closest thing to it, because you've lowered the weight, you've moved the engine forward, and you've got the benefit of two-wheel drive characteristics on roads like these. Then there's the rear wheel steer, which we had in that Target as well, and this just sharpens the whole thing up a bit more. One of the benefit is a bit more noticeable in a two-wheel drive car than in an all-wheel drive car. And again, it's more about the lack of the weight over the front axle, which makes the whole car sharper, not just something that's going on in your brain. God, people, this is so amazing. So amazing! So what's the old saying? You never buy a car, you buy a story, but being I wasn't buying this car, it would stand to reason there would be no story. Apparently, I was wrong, silly me, and it goes something like this. Way back in the day, I called my friend Frank over at Porsche and I say, you need to stop screwing around and send me one of those GT3s with a manual transmission stat. Now Frank, he's a smart man, so he's not going to get on the wrong side of a guy from New York, so we schedule a time. Fast forward to the Friday before this is supposed to turn up, and I get an email that starts with, I hate to be the bearer of bad news. Now, he offered me a choice because he's ever the problem solver. He said, well, the car that you were going to get, there's no nice way to put this, someone screwed it up. But I can reschedule you in that car, or I can send you a GT3 with a PDK on Monday as scheduled, and then over the summer, when I get my GT3 touring with a manual, I can send you that too. So I had a choice. Do I look at this glass half empty and say, gee, Frank, you really screwed the pooch on this one, and I'm not taking any one of your cars, or glass half full and pick up from another old story, but this one of the two bulls. We could have run down there, or instead, you and I can walk down there. Okay, you ready? That's one. That's two. Oh, it just never, absolutely never gets old. Okay, so with that, let's go back in auto mode, talk about a couple of notes. First and foremost, the seats. The car you're looking at is moderately equipped. It's not loaded to the gills like all the other Porsches that we've gotten. This one does have the $5,200 sport seats. Word to the wise here. Unless you are taking your $200,000 car on a racetrack, and I don't know how many people taking a $200,000 car, non-purpose built race car onto a track, I wouldn't do this. I would do just the regular seats with all the adjustments. Call me soft, old, whatever you want to say. I would prefer the other seats. But they are cool looking, there's no doubt about it. And then one little advice here that's very interesting. You go into the computer, this has all the upgrades, the UX upgrades that all the other 991.2s received, 2 years ago? So we go in here and it's got apps, and it has fuel prices. One thing I do want to point out, when it pulls up fuel prices, notice it only lists premium. And then this brings up something else, and that is the fuel economy, which is kind of one of the odd benefits that no one really talks about with 911s. I have been driving this thing around town for a couple of days before I just beat the snot out of it up here, and the fuel economy was incredible. Like, I want to say 30 mpg. That's around town. Really, really good. And this is something that I've experienced with 911s before. However, coming up here and downshifting like that, putting our foot into it, and having a wonderful time, it does change the personality a bit, but still not to what Lamborghinis and Ferraris are. So it's kind of Lotus-like in that it is a powerful sports car that does not completely rob you of all of your gas money. And then this one is fitted with the carbon ceramic brakes, so it's the larger diameter brakes, both front and rear. And this one, time and time again, yeah, you get the benefit of fade-free stops. Let's try that. But the big thing I've noticed is it's completely usable around town. Now, as a scientific experiment, I took this thing down to the airport where some of my pilot buddies who have 911s, I let them drive it. Now, all of them, with the exception of one, has 911s that are fitted with metallic rotors. I didn't tell them how this thing was equipped, and I don't think they saw the yellow calipers, and I wanted to see if they would notice a difference, so we tried it in and around the hangars there, some panic stops, and none of them really noticed or said, oh, the brakes feel weird to me, which is one of, I'd say Porsche's gotten to a point where you can fit it with the Porsche carbon ceramic brake package, and it doesn't necessarily change the personality of driving the car around town. And with that, oh my God, this is a magnificent religious experience, if there ever was one. How to really put this, but it's not you. You know? It's not. Apparently, it's me.